The city never slowed down, and that was exactly why it was the perfect place to hide something dangerous. In the middle of the evening rush, surrounded by noise, movement, and distraction, Orin Vale took a delivery that should have felt routine. But nothing about it was routine. The weight of the envelope in his hands didn't match its size, and the silence of the woman who gave it to him lingered longer than her presence. She had disappeared too quickly, as if she had just passed along a burden she couldn't carry any longer. When the message arrived, short, direct, and impossible to trace, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like confirmation. Whatever he was holding, it didn't belong in the open. And yet, he was standing in the most public place in the city, already too visible, already too late to walk away unnoticed. At first, the crowd behaved like any other, unpredictable, messy, alive. But the longer Orin moved through it, the more that illusion began to crack. Patterns started to form where randomness should have been. People paused at the wrong moments. Movements aligned just slightly too well. And then there was Myra. She didn't chase him, didn't call out, didn't even try to approach. She simply watched, with a focus that cut through the chaos like it didn't exist. It wasn't just her presence that unsettled him, it was the realization that she wasn't alone in noticing him. Others were adjusting, shifting, reacting in ways that felt coordinated but invisible to anyone not paying attention. The message echoed in his mind. He wasn't just in a crowd. He was inside something that was already aware of him. The moment Orin stepped away from the open plaza and into the tighter, dimmer alley, the noise of the city dulled, but the tension didn't. It sharpened. Away from the distraction of the crowd, everything became clearer. The weight in his hands, the sound of his own breathing, the certainty that he was being followed. When he finally looked inside the envelope, the truth revealed itself in the simplest form possible, a small, silent object with no explanation. That was what made it worse. No instructions. No markings. Just significance without context. And then Myra stepped forward, not as a threat, but as someone who already understood more than he did. Her presence didn't bring comfort. It brought clarity. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. He had been placed into something deliberate, and there was no version of this where he walked away unaffected. There are moments when fear becomes something quieter, something more controlled. That was what settled over the alley as the exits closed without urgency, without noise. The people who blocked their path didn't act like pursuers. They acted like certainty. Myra's words didn't try to convince him, they simply filled in the gaps he was already beginning to see. This wasn't about being chased. It was about being managed, guided, contained. The object in his hand wasn't valuable because of what it was valuable because of what it exposed. An exposure, in a system built on blending in, was the most dangerous thing possible. Trust became the only immediate decision he could make, and even that felt like stepping into something he didn't understand. But hesitation wasn't an option. Not anymore. Back in the open, the illusion of normalcy shattered completely. The crowd no longer felt like protection, it felt like structure. Movements overlapped too precisely. Gaps closed before they could reach them. People who should have been strangers began to act with quiet purpose. The realization didn't come all at once, but when it did, it changed everything. The threat wasn't separate from the environment. It was embedded within it. Every direction offered escape, but none of them offered freedom. Myra didn't panic, and that was the only reason Orin didn't either. She moved with the understanding that this wasn't about speed, it was about unpredictability. But even unpredictability had limits when the system around you was already adapting. The city wasn't just watching anymore. It was responding. Inside the tram, the silence was louder than the crowd had ever been. Fewer people meant fewer variables, and that made everything more dangerous. Each passenger became a possibility, a calculation, a risk waiting to reveal itself. The space felt controlled, sealed, intentional. Myra's explanation came not as a revelation, but as a confirmation of what the situation already implied. The drive wasn't just information. It was exposure on a scale that could collapse everything built on anonymity. And anonymity was the foundation of the system now surrounding them. When the tram doors locked, it didn't feel like a sudden shift. It felt like the final step in a process that had been unfolding since the moment Orin accepted the delivery. There was no interruption, no chaos, just the quiet certainty that they had been guided exactly where they were meant to be. Inside the tram, the silence was louder than the crowd had ever been. Fewer people meant fewer variables, and that made everything more dangerous. Each passenger became a possibility, a calculation, a risk waiting to reveal itself. The space felt controlled, sealed, intentional. Myra's explanation came not as a revelation, but as a confirmation of what the situation already implied. The drive wasn't just information. It was exposure on a scale that could collapse everything built on anonymity. And anonymity was the foundation of the system now surrounding them. When the tram doors locked, it didn't feel like a sudden shift. It felt like the final step in a process that had been unfolding since the moment Orin accepted the delivery. There was no interruption, no chaos, just the quiet certainty that they had been guided exactly where they were meant to be. In the darkness, the last illusion disappeared. There were no distractions left, no movement to hide behind, no crowd to dissolve into. Only presence. Only intent. The voices that broke the silence didn't carry anger or urgency. They carried control. That was what made them more dangerous than anything else. Myra understood it before Orin did. This was never about retrieval. It was about containment, about deciding the outcome long before the final moment arrived. The drive in his hand represented something irreversible. Destroying it wouldn't undo what had already begun. Keeping it wouldn't stop what was already in motion. For the first time, the weight of it wasn't physical, it was absolute. And as every figure in the dark shifted at once, one truth settled in completely. In a world built on blending in, the moment you are seen is the moment everything changes.